Okay, so recording is on now. So let's get started. Welcome again. Thank you for joining. Let me first talk a little bit about Theobald software. We've been around for about 12 years now, and we have focused in those 12 years on providing SAP connectivity solutions to our customers. In this webinar, we will focus on data warehouse scenarios, but we have other products and solutions for customers that allow them to integrate their systems and business processes with their SAP environment. So SAP has really been, over the course of these 12 years, our area of expertise, and this is where our know-how is. We've grown in this time to about 2,200 SAP customers, customers from all geographies across all industries. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And we're actually very proud of this number because, as you might know, the bar for any application or system that wants to integrate or connect to an SAP system is very high. Customers are very protective of their SAP environment because they run their business on it. So this is a number that we're really proud of. We also have quite a partner network, and some of you are in the session today. We focus primarily as a company. We focus primarily on the development as well as the sales and the support of our solutions. So we don't do a whole lot of consulting, and we're not a consulting organization. We don't provide a lot of services, but we do have a broad partner network. As I mentioned, consulting companies, but also resellers or ISVs that help us bring our solutions to customers. We have today 3 regional offices. Our headquarters is in Stuttgart, Germany, and we also have offices in the US, in Seattle, which is where I work, as well as in Hong Kong to service our Asia market from there. On this slide, you see where our customers are located. The pins are where we have offices, and we sort of grew with the SAP market out of Europe. There's a lot of companies in Europe that use SAP, but also starting with, I would say, the mid and late 90s, there was a lot of traction in the Americas, both North and South America, as well as Asia. And so we have a good customer base there now as well. This is a sampling of some of our customers. We have very large SAP implementations among our customers, but also some smaller companies. And the main thing here to take away is our solutions work across industries. It doesn't matter if you're in automotive or manufacturing or pharmaceuticals or public sector. As long as you have what we call a traditional SAP system running on the NetWeaver ABAP platform, we have a solution for you. Having said that, there's also some systems by SAP, mainly some recent acquisitions. Think of Concur, travel management, or maybe a SuccessFactors, which is an HR performance solution. These are cloud-based solutions that SAP has acquired over the past few years that run on a different platform. They don't run on the more traditional SAP NetWeaver platform. And so we don't really target those systems, and that's something to keep in mind here. So why do customers care about what we're talking about here today? Why do they care about bringing SAP data into their non-SAP data warehouse? First, customers have a need for SAP data, and they want that SAP data outside of SAP in many cases. And I've listed some examples for why customers want to bring data outside of their SAP environment. Probably the main one that we see with our customers is the area of business intelligence and analytics. So customers not only have SAP business data, but they may also have Salesforce or Dynamics or what have you. And oftentimes they want to bring that together in one data warehouse environment and then put their BI and analytics solutions on top of that. That could be a Tableau or a Click or a Power BI or what have you. But in many cases, that happens outside of SAP. Another area that I see quite often is the area of planning and consolidation. Again, here a company might have a non-SAP tool to do planning and consolidation. But because most of their core business records, all of their financials, all of their planning data resides in SAP, they want to bring that out, or at least a portion of it, and then do their planning and consolidation outside of it. And then the third one is around application or process integration. So think of a web application, a mobile application, maybe Office 365, a SharePoint site, where you need access to SAP data. Maybe you have an employee updating an address record or looking at a pay stub on a mobile device or on your web application. Oftentimes that data actually resides in SAP, so you have to figure out a way to integrate that SAP data into your custom application or third-party application. And so with that, I would like actually to display a poll, and if you could tell me briefly with the poll that is displayed now, what you or your customers are mostly interested in. You know, does it match with the areas that I mentioned? So go ahead and make your selection and submit. So far we have 100% BI and analytics. Okay, I'm going to wait a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to close that poll now. And definitely, yes, we have 100% on BI and analytics. So definitely that also maps with what we see, very common use case for why customers want to bring SAP data into their data warehouse. Traditionally, what companies often have done in the past is they hired one or more ABAP developer. It's one of the SAP prescribed ways to read data from your SAP system. And then what that ABAP code does after it's been reading the data from various tables or objects inside of SAP, it would dump the data into a text file. And then customers would use some other process, maybe an ETL tool or some custom code to further process that data that is in text format. So this process is quite expensive. It's time-consuming to develop this code. It's error-prone because the data goes through different stages on a file share. And so many customers have been looking for a better way to do this than writing ABAP code. And then customers also have quite a long list of demands and requirements for this type of process, right? The process must be reliable because if you want to use a BI tool that you base your decisions on, you want the right data to show up in your BI tool. It has to be performant and scaled to millions of records. You know, I speak to customers regularly that have tens, maybe hundreds of millions of records in their SAP system that they're trying to move outside or copy outside. It has to be secure. We're talking business data that has to be treated securely. It has to be auditable. It has to be supported both for the customer, but also from an SAP point of view. Also, the process needs to be more cost-effective than developing code. Cost-effective to acquire if there's license requirements, to implement, ideally without writing any code, and to maintain over the long run. And then the other one we hear more and more is, SAP customers might be used to having month-long implementations in the past, but that's going away. Customers more and more want to see results in days, maybe weeks, but certainly not months. So let me introduce to you our first product, a product called Xtract Universal that we have developed to meet the needs of customers that we just saw. It typically starts with a customer's SAP environment, and whether the customer has ERP or it's called ECC, the product from SAP, or a business warehouse BW system. It could also be a supply chain or CRM system, or maybe they're already looking at into the future a little bit. S/4HANA is the latest release of SAP's ERP system. Regardless of the system that the customer has, if it runs on the NetWeaver platform, and all of these systems that are listed do, we can connect to those systems. Certainly the more common ones are ERP or ECC and BW. And then what Xtract Universal brings to the table is a set of 9 different extractors. And this is something I think that distinguishes us from perhaps some other solutions that you might find on the market. If the data exists in SAP, there's a good chance that we will get to it with one of these extractors. What these all have in common is all of them connect at the application layer in SAP, so we would never connect directly at the database, for instance. That makes us compliant with customer requirements. That puts us in a security and auditing context, so we don't fly under the radar of your SAP basis administrator. At the same time, we can still enable performant and very reliable data extraction using these modules. And you can see here we can connect to tables or joins of tables in SAP. This data source is a very interesting and actually quite sophisticated module. It taps into the same data source in the SAP transactional system that an SAP business warehouse would do. So it uses SAP's own internal mechanism to bring data out. And one of the advantages of this component is that it supports delta extraction, meaning you can start with a full extraction, pull that across once, and then you can flip a switch, and going forward you will only get new and updated records. So for very large data sets, that's a very important and very useful component. The next 3, Cube and what is called BEX extraction or Business Explorer, OpenHub, Hierarchy, these are SAP BW specific extractors. Then we can also connect to function modules and BOPs, SAP's own query, and also ABAP reports. So with that, we cover a broad spectrum of your customers' SAP environments. And then Xtract Universal reads the SAP data from one of these components. It does the required data transformation. So we understand the SAP native data types, and the tool will, behind the scenes, translate that into whatever the target environment wants as a data type, for instance, a SQL Server data type or a .NET data type. And then we give you some control over what you want to do with the data, how the load behavior into the target should look. Do you always want to insert, or if the record already exists? Do you maybe want to update an existing record? Or the combination of the two would be a merge function. Do you want to truncate a table and then reinsert the records, right? So you don't duplicate records over and over again. So you have some fine-grained control over the load behavior into the destinations. And the destinations is a growing list of environments. I listed the database environments here that are supported by Xtract Universal. So if you have on-premise Teradata, Oracle, SQL Server, IBM DB2, or if you have a cloud database, SQL Azure or Amazon Redshift, for instance, Xtract Universal can write the SAP data directly into these destinations. And I'm going to stop the presentation here, and I will switch to Xtract Universal to give you a sense for how the tool looks. So let me start this on my local machine here. Okay, so what you see here is the Xtract Universal Designer. Xtract Universal is a relatively simple tool. I have it installed on my desktop, and that's a perfect way to start out and give the tool a try. If you were to go into production with this tool, we recommend you install it on a standalone server. It doesn't have to be a very powerful or beefy server. Any standard Windows server will do. And what you can see here now in my designer, in this list down here, I already have some data extractions against SAP defined. You can see from this icon here and the type, I'm using different extraction components. Here I'm extracting from a cube, here from a delta Q source. This is some hierarchy data. This is from a table. And you can have different sources in the tool. You can actually have as many SAP sources as you want. You can see here I have a BW system defined. I have an ECC system defined. Sometimes you may have a sandbox or some other SAP environments. And then each of these extractions also has a destination. And you can see here this extract is outputting the SAP data into a browser-based CSV list. This one is going to an Alteryx tool destination. This one goes to a SQL DB. This one goes to Redshift. And so you can really sort of mix and match what you want to do here. And so let me show you, if you were to start out with this tool, the first thing you would do is you would define your source. Where are you pulling your SAP data from? And you can do that by adding a new source using this dialog. And this looks very much like the parameters that your SAP users would use to connect through SAP GUI. So I'm going to call this SAP ERP. Oops, I give it a dash. Okay, and then you specify a host, and I'm going to use our demo system that is accessible to me here. And then you provide a client. That's very typical for SAP logon parameters, a language, and then a user and a password. Okay, we also provide single sign-on capabilities, and then I can test my connection. Okay, works great. And so now I should see in my list a new connection called SAP ERP. And you would do the same thing if you would have a BW system or, a CRM system or what have you. Okay, so here's my system now called SAP ERP. And then in the next step, I can create, based on this new system, this new source system, I can create a new extraction. So I'll click on the new button. I will select the source that I just created, SAP ERP, and I'm going to use an example, a simple example that pulls data from a table, and I'm going to call this SAP vendors. I choose the type of extraction, in this case SAP table, and then click on OK. And then in my next dialog, I have to choose the table for my vendor dataset. I can use the search function, and we're trying to make this as easy as possible for somebody using the tool. You can, for instance, browse through the SAP application hierarchy that the tool will display, if you're familiar with that, and you can go sort of through the functional modules in SAP, or you can also use wildcards and search by description, for instance. So if I'm looking for vendor master data in SAP, I can do a wildcard search and then see all the tables that match this description below. So the table that I want to use here is called LFA1, Vendor Master Table. And certainly you need a little bit of SAP knowledge here. You need to understand where your data is located. But we're trying to make this as intuitive and as easy as possible. Once I've selected my table, the tool will give me a list of all the columns of that table. And in this demo, I'm not going to bring all of the columns, but only a few. Let's say the number, the vendor number, country key, maybe the name, city, and maybe the region, and then we'll call it good. You could also specify a where clause. You can work with parameters. And every one of our components has some extraction settings built in that really are designed to optimize for performance. In this case, I'm actually using a compression module in SAP that we provide with the tool. And so for larger tables, think of some large accounting tables in SAP, this comes in really handy, and you will see much increased performance using this setting. Okay, so now what I have now is, here is my SAP vendors extract of type table. It has a source and it has a default destination of browser-based CSV. And what that does is it would allow you to quickly, in the browser, inspect your records, make sure everything works. And I'm going to show you how this works by selecting Run and then Run in the browser. Okay, so now the tool connects to my SAP system, and it will bring back my vendor records as a comma-separated list in the browser. I wouldn't recommend this for very large data sets, but in this case I have hundreds, maybe a couple thousand of records, so that's fine for the browser. And so everything seems to be working here. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to change the destination of this extraction to a SQL database, because ultimately that's what we want to do. We want to bring this SAP data into a data warehouse environment. And I have a destination set up here that is called SQL DB. I can look at the specifics of this connection. Okay, it's of type SQL Server. And if I click on Edit, it will tell me that, again, the type is SQL Server. I have specified a server name. In my case, it's my local SQL Express database instance. And I specified a connection string and database name. So the tool can directly write to this database. Now, the tool gives me some other controls. I mentioned earlier that we give you some control over the load behavior. And this is what you see on the right-hand side here in the tool. It has a preparation phase, it has a row processing phase, and a finalization phase. So for instance, in the preparation phase, I could say before the records are written into my database, drop and recreate the table, right? Or I could say truncate or create if it doesn't exist. Or I could say No, none. Or I could say custom SQL, and then I can generate any SQL statement that I would want, and the tool would then send that over first. It would execute that on your database, and then it would start processing the rows. Okay, similar for row processing. Do I want to do a straight insert, or do I want to do a merge, meaning if the record exists, update it, if it doesn't, insert it, or do I want to use some custom SQL here? And then there's also a finalization phase if I want to do something after the records have been written. Okay, so it gives you some control over the load behavior. And one other point I'd like to make at this point in the presentation here, Xtract Universal is not a full-fledged ETL platform. I would say it is an ETL tool for SAP data, but not a complete ETL platform. And that has certain advantages. If you compare this tool maybe to a full-fledged ETL platform, maybe an SAP Business Objects Data Services or Informatica, they have a lot more capabilities in terms of adding transformations, maybe data cleansing and whatnot. We're not trying to be that because that also comes with complexities, and it's reflected in the price of these tools and the knowledge you have to build and acquire to work with these tools. We're trying to give our customers a fairly simple tool where they can quickly create an extract against an SAP object. We help them do the required transformations, mainly transforming SAP data types into what the target environment expects, and then an easy way to load that data with some control over the load behavior into their data destination or data warehouse of choice. And so now, going back to my extract, I have everything defined now. I have the source, I have the type of table, and I have the destination, and now I'm ready to run this. Now I'm not going to choose run in the browser, which is more of a preview function. I'm going to say run in the command line tool, which you can also schedule. Most of our customers use the Windows built-in task scheduler to run an extraction on a regular basis. So now I can also look at my log. We provide detailed logging information. It tells me at each step of the extraction what's going on, and it looks like this was successful. I can also, from the timestamp, see how long this took. In this case, it took just 3 seconds to read these 2,300 rows. And now let me look at my database with a SQL Server Management Studio and see what happened there. I'm connecting to my local SQL Express database. And under databases, I should see my SAP data warehouse. There it is. And under tables, I see a table that was created with the same name that I had in my extract in Xtract Universal called SAP Vendors. And if I do a quick query on this, I can see that my vendor records have been inserted. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Now I'd like to show you one more example of an extraction. Let's go back into Xtract Universal. In this scenario, I'm going to extract data from a cube. I'm going to start from scratch again. So I'm going to say new extraction. And in this case, I'm going to pull from my BW system. Okay, it's also a very common scenario that we see with our customers. I have defined the connection parameters for this BW system earlier. In the same way, I created the connection to my ECC system. Let me just test the connection. It works perfectly. And then I'm going to call this SAP Cube. Let's call it SAP BW Cube. Okay, I select Cube or BEX query as my extraction type. And then similar to what we've seen before, in the next step, I can now browse to my object in SAP. There aren't that many in here, so I'm just going to do a star. But I do want to do an info cube, not a BEX query. Okay, and I'm going to choose, there's some sales sample data in here. I'm going to choose that one, if I can find it. There it is. Sales overview. Okay, so some sales data that I have in my SAP BW system. Now the tool will go out, read the metadata, and the data in BW is organized differently. It's organized around key figures and dimensions. So it's a cube structure, and I can pick the dimensions that I want to include. Let's go here with company code, maybe the sold to party. How about the distribution channel? Then I would like to do sales office. I would also like to bring in the material or the product, this one, and then some key figures. I'm interested in the open orders quantity. I'm interested in the open orders value. I'm also interested in the net value. Okay, and then similar to what I mentioned before, I have important settings here. Some are functionally relevant, right? So for instance, I can say here, instead of these cryptic technical names, add the descriptive names to the column. So it's a little bit easier for me to understand these columns and the values in them. And then again, for performance and performance optimization, you can specify package size. For instance, this would bring only 20,000 records at a time, and then the tool would go back and fetch the next 20,000 records. So this can be very helpful for memory management, also inside of SAP. I can slice the data into subqueries, and so I have some very useful settings here to manage large data extractions. So I'm going to go with that, and now I have an SAP Cube demo here, and I'm going to put that into a cloud database, Azure SQL. You see here I have the same control over the load behavior with the preparation, row processing, and finalization phase. And let me just show you quickly how I define this Azure SQL or Azure Data Warehouse connection. Both work. It could be a DB or a data warehouse. All I had to do here is pick the type of Azure Data Warehouse that comes in the tool, and oops, I lost it now. And then from my Azure portal, I copy-pasted the server name from my Azure subscription, and then I provided the logon information and the database name. So let me also do a quick connection here to make sure this works. This will take a little bit longer because it takes a couple seconds longer to connect up into Azure. Okay. Looks like there might be an issue. Okay. Typically, when you have this, it's related to the firewall. I did run through this earlier, and it worked. I might have been on a different connection. But nonetheless, let me show you briefly the Azure connection. It's going to log on to my Azure portal. Okay. Okay, and if I look at my resources here, in my Azure subscription, I do have an SAP DW data warehouse configured. And I can display the connection string here, which is what I used in Xtract Universal. Okay, and this was in this setting right here. Yeah, this is my server name that I copied over from Azure. And then you have to set the firewall here. You can do this directly, and this is my local machine here. It tells me now. It's really helpful the way it does it because it recognizes your client IP address, and I have this already configured as an exception here in my firewall. So I'm not sure why it's not going through at the moment, but that's okay. So let me close this and let me run this. Okay, let's see if it runs. It might error out because of this connection issue. And what you can do again here is follow along in the log to see what it does. All right, now it's checking the database connection. Okay, in the meantime, I'm also going to look at it from my SQL Server administration tool. Let me open another connection, this time not to my local SQL DB, but to the same service in the cloud. Okay, Xtract Universal finished. And yes, a network-related issue. So it cannot reach it at the moment, which is likely due to the firewall settings. And I bet I'm getting the same issue here. So I won't be able to show you this, unfortunately. Yep, something is not working with my network connection at the moment. Okay, but nonetheless, this, I think you get the idea. This is how you could directly write into a database in the cloud. The last thing I'd like to show you in Xtract Universal is the various destinations that you have available. You can see I have already a number of different destinations created, and this is a growing list of different destinations that we provide with the tool. Not just databases, which is the main topic of today's session, but also BI tools, right? We can write directly into the Power BI service. We can write directly into a SharePoint list or into a Tableau TDE file. So you have a lot of options and flexibility with this tool where you want to write the data to. And we also support flat file or an OData data stream. Okay, so that was Xtract Universal. I'm going to switch back to my presentation for a moment. And I would like to introduce to you one more tool in our portfolio that is also geared towards the same data warehousing scenario that we just explored. Let me go into presentation mode here. Okay. Good. So we saw Xtract Universal. Another tool we have in the portfolio, which is very similar to Xtract Universal, is called Xtract IS. And as we saw before, customers have an SAP landscape, and The difference here is instead of Xtract Universal, you can use the combination of SQL Server integration services and our tool, Xtract IS, or our plugins really into SSIS, with the same data type extractors that we've seen before. So there's no difference between the tool in terms of what you can connect to in SAP and having the same reliable and performant data extraction capabilities. The difference is what you prefer as a customer. Do you already use Microsoft's SSIS as an ETL platform? Then maybe Xtract IS is a good choice for you because you already have an ETL platform, you know how to create packages and do data extraction and movement. But we do have some customers that don't use SSIS, and for those customers, a more standalone tool like Xtract Universal is of advantage. And then because we reside in SSIS, we're embedded sort of in SSIS, you have all the transformation capabilities that come with SSIS, right? You can sort, you can merge data, aggregate, there is some cleansing function built in, fuzzy lookups and what have you. SSIS gives you a lot of those capabilities. And then similarly, when it comes to where the data ends up is you have all the destinations that come with SSIS, and that's primarily SQL Server, also again Azure SQL, any OLADB, ADO.NET destination, also Hadoop file system, and third-party destinations. Okay, so with that, let me briefly introduce Xtract IS to you. And for that, I need to switch to a different monitor. So give me 1 second to change my screen. Okay. Okay, so let me just make sure we can see this. Okay, perfect. So now, because Xtract IS is built into SSIS, you get the same design and runtime experience. Okay, and the design time experience for SSIS, where the SSIS user develops the packages, is the Microsoft Visual Studio environment, and that's what you see here. And I can start with a new project. Okay, this is standard SSIS functionality, and with SSIS installed, you get these business intelligence projects. You would choose an integration services project, and then you get your design canvas to start design your extraction packages. And with our tool, with Xtract IS installed, what you will get is as soon as you start to design your data flow, which will do the data movement, you also get your SAP data source components here in the SSIS toolbox on the left. Okay, and these are the same types or same components that we've seen earlier in Xtract Universal. I'm going to do the same scenario that you've seen earlier. I want to extract from a table. So you simply drag and drop the type of object that you want to pull SAP data from. You drag it over into the data flow. But before that, I need to establish a connection of type extract. This is a connection type that we plug in when you install the tool. And then similar to before, I will have to specify my SAP credentials. Oops. language, and a host. This is again our demo SAP ECC system. And let's see if that works out okay. Yep. Okay, I can rename this. Okay, this was an SAP ECC connection. Perfect. And now I can start to configure my table component. It will automatically assign the connection. And this looks very similar to what we just saw in Xtract Universal. Like both tools have the same capabilities when it comes to pulling data from SAP. I can select my vendor master table. Choose my columns that I want. Okay, and then as I mentioned, now you have all of the functionality of of SSIS, of Microsoft's integration services at your disposal. You can use any of these transformations that are built in or any of the destinations to send this SAP data to. For data warehouse scenarios, you will very likely use something like an OLADB destination or the SQL Server destination. And I'm going to configure this now. I have a local installation of SQL Server here, and with this extract, I'm going to create a new table that I'm going to call SAP vendors, right? Based on the data that I'm pulling. These are the 4 fields that I've selected from my SAP data source. I can check the mappings. Yep, everything looks good. And I can rename this too if I want to. Let's call this SAP vendors. And then I can run this. And what I should see here now is, first of all, in debug mode, this package will now execute. We are fully integrated into the SSIS environment, right? Into the monitoring. I can see what's happening with my package. Okay, 2,000, almost 300 records extracted. And now to verify the results, I'm also going to bring up SQL Server Management Studio. And what I should see here is in my SAP Data Warehouse database, I should see this table. Okay, so there it is. I'm connecting to my local database. Here is my SAP DW database, and let's look at the tables. I have a few already. Employees, sales, SAP vendors is the one I just created. And this is where my records were sent to. Okay, and again, this was an on-premise local database. SSIS also supports SQL Azure and other cloud environments, so I could have, instead of created a destination to a local DB, I could have created a connection to a cloud database, and it would have written the data directly into that data warehouse. Okay, using any of these destinations. Okay, and I want to show you one more solution that I prepared. This is another nice thing about SSIS. You can get pretty sophisticated with what you do here. You can run extracts in parallel, right? So here, for instance, I have a small sample prepared. In this data flow, I'm accessing 3 different SAP objects. This one's a table, same example that you just saw. I'm also extracting from a BAPI or function module, and I'm extracting sales information from a cube. And I can run all of these in parallel at the same time and follow the progress along in my SSIS environment. And by the way, Xtract Universal also supports parallel execution. Okay, the Poppy has a few more records. Yeah. And in all of these three cases, I'm sending data to my SQL Server database. Okay, I'm going to let this finish, and then I will finish up with a couple more slides. Poppies tend to be a little bit slower sometimes. Okay, so it just pulled over 4,000 employee records. Okay, so let me switch back. This was Xtract IS. Okay, so we've been through this. In summary, just to give you, just leave you with a brief comparison, and I will share these slides and the recording with you afterwards. Both tools, Xtract Universal and Xtract IS, targeted towards the same customer scenarios. Customers wanting to bring SAP data into their data warehouse of choice, in the cloud or on-premise. So what are the differences? First one, let me move ahead here. Xtract Universal installs on the Windows OS. It's a standalone tool. It has no other dependencies. Whereas Xtract IS requires SSIS. It works inside of SSIS. And that determines the design and runtime, right? Xtract Universal, we've seen this, has its own designer where you design your extractions, whereas Xtract IS depends on the SQL Server data tools. That's the Visual Studio environment that we just saw. The runtime, where does it get executed? Where do you do monitoring, logging, security setting? In Xtract Universal's case, all of that happens in there, in the Xtract Universal runtime. In Xtract IS, all of it happens inside of SSIS. How can you schedule extracts to, let's say, run on a daily basis, or some customers run twice a day or weekly, however often? Xtract Universal, you can run any extract using the Windows Task Scheduler or any scheduling tool of your choice. Most of our customers use the built-in Windows Task Scheduler because it's already part of the OS and it's for free. In Xtract IS, customers typically use the SQL Server agent, but you could also use the Windows Task Scheduler or a tool of your choice. I mentioned it, Xtract Universal is by design not a full-fledged ETL platform, and that really for the customer means it offers lower TCO. It's less complex, it's less costly to acquire from a licensing point of view. It's easier to learn, and you will see quicker results. So I often describe it as, in terms of ETL terms, we're big on the E part, on the extraction part. We're really good at the extraction from SAP, and we give you the required transformations and load behavior to bring the data, the SAP data, into your destination of choice. On the Xtract IS side, SSIS is your ETL platform. You need to license that, but that also comes with all the transformations, all the destinations, all the capabilities that SSIS provides. In terms of data extraction against SAP, both tools are identical. You have the same components, the same proven capabilities to get data out of your SAP system. The destinations in Xtract Universal, a growing list of on-premise cloud databases, other environments like Salesforce or SharePoint, and BI tools, Alteryx, Power BI, Click, Tableau. And then in Xtract IS, you have the standard SSIS destinations, plus third parties, and there's quite a big list of that. The cost, again, we're trying to offer low total cost of ownerships for our customers. The Enterprise Edition of Xtract Universal is $13,000. We license it per server, not per user or how many SAP connections or extractions you run. All of that is included. All it matters where you install or how often you install the tool on a server. And then for each of the destinations, it's $6,100. Let's say you want to send data to SQL Server, or if you also want to do Salesforce, you buy a destination add-on for that environment. Xtract IS has a smaller version, if you will, of the Enterprise Edition. It comes with 4 of the 9 extractors. Some customers like to start with that, and then they can upgrade at a later on. The Ultimate Edition contains all of the 9 different extraction types, and you can see here the price is the same between the two tools. So it's really up to the customer to figure out what works best for them. I would encourage you to go to our website if this was interesting to you or if this was interesting to your customers. Give the tool a try. Again, we're trying to be easy to use. We try to deliver quick results. And with the download, with the free trial that you can install, we also offer you our support. And for the customers and partners in the Americas, that's me. I will be your first contact. For the folks in Europe and Asia, I will direct you to my colleagues over there. So I want to thank you for listening to this webcast. I hope it was informative to you, and feel free to reach out to us with any questions that you may have. And please also complete the survey that you will see once this session completes. Thank you very much. We also have, let's see, do we have some time for Q&A? I will stay on for a little bit. I think we're at the top of the hour, but if you have some questions, go ahead and ask. I will stay on for a little bit. So thank you again.